Welcome back to an episode of Spectator Mode. I'm Neil Strebig. With me, as always, is Donald Double D DeCray.
It's gonna be crazy when you can't say that anymore.
So why can't I sit? Why won't I be able to sit
Oh, when
anymore?
I'm getting married, did I tell you I'm changing my last name? Big
Oh
news
no!
podcast. Yeah, I'm. When I get married, I'm taking. We are choosing our own last name essentially, my fiance and I. So yeah, it's not gonna be a D anymore. I'll
I
discuss the
thought it was gonna be
details with you later.
Dumbledore.
But yeah,
So
we're gonna have to figure
Jesus.
that out. What's our open gonna be?
Oh my gosh. Well, hopefully it still goes well with Double D. So because Double
Yeah.
D's not that's not going anywhere. It's staying. So no, I just won't even say your first and last name. Then I'll just refer to you as Double
That's
D.
just my
That's it.
name. It's like a gamer tag that you're known by now. I've become
So,
Prince. The artist formerly known as
go
Prince.
back to
I'm a
Don
symbol.
Perignon days. Christ.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But no, we got good lineup. But before we do get into that, couple of things we were kind of talking about before we start recording here, as far as format, because we have been going a little bit longer with Spectator Mode. So kind of, you guys have noticed, have been listening. Kind of the last topic we've been doing a bit of a deeper dive on, about 15, 20 minutes worth, especially last week's too with the
Yeah.
metaverse. We went a
Yeah.
solid almost half an hour just on that topic.
Oh boy.
So we think we're going to do is keep Spectator Mode tight, 20, 30 minutes absolute tops,
I mean,
and
probably less than
then
that
take separate
ideally.
topics.
Yeah,
So yeah, so 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops in, and
I think
then
so.
take
Yeah.
some separate topics to where we can kind of get in the weeds a bit more, give it some more of its due, 20 minutes, 30 minutes for that. And then, of course, who saved over would be the main segments. We're talking 45 minutes, 90 minutes of us just geeking out about how crappy Attack on Titan season two was, or final season part two,
That'll be the
or
real
of course
deep dives. Yeah, really
NFTs.
getting in there, huh?
NFT episode might be 4.5 hours. I'll be honest with you.
God, that'll who knows, man. That'll be his whole thing. Yeah, so we're doing that change in terms of the pacing of the show. I think the concept was to be fast, and I think we want to move towards living up to that concept a little bit better. And the second one is also our release timing is going to be a little bit longer just because life gets in the way and getting these things edited and posted in sometimes like less than a day or two is just for us not the easiest to do. So they'll still be releasing on the same days typically. It's just going to be coming out a week after the time of recording, so it's going to be a little bit more of a delay. But I don't think that's going to make a big difference one way or another. I hope in terms of the newsiness of what we're going through and the stuff we're talking about. So
Yeah.
hopefully it's all still stuff you're looking to hear.
So now, basically, I mean, yeah, basically, week between recording Thursdays, basically. So rather than Sundays, it'd be Thursdays from
There you
here on
go.
out. Occasional Friday kind of thrown in there, maybe with the holidays.
There you go. And so what do we got this
But
week?
for the rundown of this week, we're talking a little about Overwatch 2, my favorite game that may never actually get made. Who knows?
I mean, it's getting there. It's definitely getting closer.
It is Thor, Love and Thunder. Speaking on the theme of love, death, and robots as well. We got some PlayStation and Xbox news as well with some free to play games. Sega had a pretty big announcement with some retro gaming. And of course, our favorite Flash ever, Ezra Miller, and some more shenanigans.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and we'll get to that in a hot minute. But I guess I'll kick this off here with the Overwatch 2 news.
mm,
Overwatch 2 has finally released the reworks for two of their champions, Orisa and Doomfist. Doomfist, we've known about for a long time, is going to be solidly positioned as a tank. This has kind of been one of the ongoing criticisms with the character of his damage is really, really good. He's meant to be a damage character, obviously. But then because he's also an up close and personal character, he has to have the tankiness to survive. So he sits in this weird place of being like either a tank that does way too much damage relative to other tanks in the game. And he doesn't really help defend his allies or something like that. Or he's a damage dealer who's just way more bulky than other damage dealers. In other words, he's overtuned. So they've clarified Doomfist is going to be a tank. They've made changes in that regard. They've also changed up his abilities with Power Block and Seismic Slam for repositioning and to actually allow him to block things and function more as a traditional tank does in Overwatch. So that I think is probably a good change overall. And then along with that, Orisa is getting a rework as well. It mostly looks like they're moving to increase her mid-range game and her kind of control a little bit as well with changes to her javelin and the way that's working. So I don't know. I don't know how much I feel about the Orisa rework as much as the Doomfist I feel like was definitely in the right direction.
yeah, I mean, Doomfist, I think, kind of had to be a tank. And is it Ariza or Arissa? I always say Arissa.
Oh gosh, you're
I don't know the
asking.
proper
I don't know
like
either.
sound because I think she's one of the characters too that doesn't actually have her introduction is in like an animated. I don't even know if they say the actual name. They just kind of talk about how she's made.
Yeah, we would have to look that up in a fashion that's not really
But you
compatible
did
right
miss
now.
out too. They did announce Souljourn as well, who's the new DPS
Oh,
character,
yeah,
Canadian origin, has a railgun, has a power slide.
true story.
Basically is Soldier 76 with a railgun, in my opinion. I don't see anything new. Some early things say she's kind of broken, OP, but that's kind of the normal DPS characters when they come out.
Hmm.
With Orisa and Doomfist, I think Doomfist should be a tank. I think it actually fits his build a lot better what they're doing. It makes him a bit more offensive. Orisa, kind of worried about because she was kind of my sleeper pick all the time, honestly. And with this, the movement speed with the javelin, she's not having the shield. I don't know how I feel about her being a bit more mobile. I do like the javelin pulling people in, but for me, she was my off shield tank. That's kind of what I was like, okay, I don't really like playing Ryan all the time and just being a shield. Orisa was like, okay, I can still do damage if I know I'm gonna have a healer. I can post up and just defend like a maniac. And most of the times on escort maps, it was super clutch. So with this, I guess it really depends on how fast she is and how much damage you can put out too, because her reload time is brutal. So the shield and the fortified for me was so clutch because once she was out of ammo, you were sitting duck.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting because like there's definitely fortify slows you down and makes you tanky, but then the javelin spin that they're giving to her um gives forward speed and stuff like that. So like I'm not quite sure what playstyle they're envisioning for her in the end, but moving along.
Thor Love and Thunder, we got the first look, teaser trailer. I guess it's a teaser with length, but I guess it would still count as a first trailer just with the time frame it's coming out. But got the
Hmm.
kind of first look of the movie. What's your initial thoughts? Because there's a lot to unpack in 90-second bit.
Yeah, it's
We
very
also saw the
dense.
first look as far as Jane as Thor at the very end
Yeah,
too,
so
which
I
was
mean,
a big
let's
deal.
first of
But
all, spoiler warning this. Obviously, like we're talking about stuff. This is all in the teaser trailer, so I don't think this is any deep spoilers. But I know personally, I typically avoid trailers because a lot of trailers are poorly made and do give away a lot of plot points, especially for somebody who might be otherwise avoiding the media. Big one being we got our first look at Jane Foster as Lady Thor. Looks great, frankly. Um, the other one too is we do see Thor's sort of like recovery that he's doing, coming back from his depression and stuff, getting back in shape, trying to find his place in the world and everything else. All of that's teased. There's some great homages to comic panels in there, especially when you see like the great beast in the snow that's laying down dead. Like that is like ripped straight out of a comic. That's awesome. So it's definitely hitting all the right notes, I think, in terms of staying true enough to the comics and paying homage to that. We've also got, I think, a really good story. We're starting to see the Greek gods coming in as well, so they're expanding the universe further. So a lot of the stuff for them to play along with. And I will say, to its credit, I don't think the teaser trailer gets too far past what I would consider like the first act of the movie with the stuff it has. So it's not too bad on spoilers if that's a concern for you.
what I was surprised by with this, because Thor Ragnarok, I like I'm gonna mispronounce his name, Takiti, the director, the
Taika
New Zealander.
Waititi?
Yeah, like I do like a lot of his stuff. Even his new show on HBO, Our Flag Means Death. Quite a quite a surprise, enjoyable show there. But this seems very much like just enjoyable film.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a send off. I don't know how much it's going to really connect. Even with Jane coming in as the new Thor, it just seems just like a fun ride. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm interested to see what MCU fans think of it. Hemsworth deserves a good send off. It definitely looks like we're going to see that as far as his journey and
Yeah.
his, okay, I accomplished everything I want to do. Like, where do I go from here? Um, I don't know. It would be interesting because Thor Ragnarok to me was a fun ride as well, but really didn't connect until the very end as
Yeah.
far as the MCU and stuff. So it was kind of like we're getting back to back with this. The Guardians are mixed in. That's cool, but really a bit
Yeah.
astray from what we're used to with MCU movies.
And
So that's
that's
more I'm
kind
curious
of
about.
one of my concerns, I think, going forward with the MCU, and I've mentioned this many, many times, is how much they're expanding the universe and what that means for moviegoers in terms of keeping all the various plot lines and characters straight and how much they matter. I'm kind of hoping this is going to be a sort of like one off movie that it is Chris Hemsworth's send off, There will be stuff in here that does matter in the greater scheme of things, but for the most part, just have fun with it, go on a wild ride and have a good time with it. Like I hope that's what they're going for. Love and Thunder itself is just a fun, great name. You know what I mean? Like go ham, go
Yeah.
crazy, don't take yourself too seriously. And um, I hope we can send Chris off in the way he deserves. I was really surprised, I will say, to see Natalie Portman coming back after her distaste for the second Thor movie. She like sounded like she didn't want to come back at all. But
I don't think those are her arms though. Her arms look jacked in the trailer
I
though.
mean, I don't know. There's been some stills actually of her like on set, and like she's definitely better shape than I am. But I do think we
She's
need to
always
move
been a
along to our
beast. Yeah.
next one. So
Well, I mean, yeah. Speaking of love, I mean,
yeah,
Love, Death, and Robots announced season 3, Netflix. One of my favorite shows on Netflix.
really,
I don't know how you feel about it. Yeah, I think season 1, I think, is still one of the best things on Netflix. Period. Season 2 wasn't as good. I felt still enjoyable, but didn't hit the same stride I felt season 1 did. But for y'all that are unfamiliar, it's episodic show. The whole thing's animation style. One of the 3 themes: love, death, or robots, basically, or a combination of all 3. It goes from super cheery stories to super dark, twisted sci-fi, fantasy, the whole kit and caboodle. What I love about it is it ties in so much with the animation, with if it's, a cyberpunk kind of dystopian, it is definitely computer animated CGI, a bit edgier on the tones and stuff. If it's a bit mythical, they definitely pull more of an anime kind of look to it as well. It just really, everything about it fits storytelling. And that's what I love about it. And the episodic formula, absolutely phenomenal. My beef for season 2 is just everything looked the same. The animation styles all looked the same almost through season 2, which was upsetting.
yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I'll say is I don't know how much experience our viewers or even you have really with like film festival stuff. Have you gone to any of those types of things? I would assume you
No,
have. No?
I can't say I have. No.
Well, that's
Not
interesting.
like a traditional film festival, like showings at indie theaters and stuff too. Sure, I mean when they're
Yeah, yeah,
doing
yeah.
Studio Ghibli week or whatever it may be, but not like
Um,
back to back to back movies.
so back in college, I did a lot of that because I was living with a film major, and so that was obviously a lot of what he did, and so we would go out together. And Love, Death, and Robots has a lot of that vibe to it in terms of it's a little bit more experimental. I think maybe some of the similar vignettes and like color palettes and stuff is the limitation of these. I think smaller studios for the most part putting out these stories. You know what I mean? Like they're not like high budget films and stuff like that. Still very good quality. But for me, it feels much more like a roundup of like independent movies and stuff like that that are either small funded or self funded kind of projects. So I think there are some limitations there that should be recognized. And to your point, like they do focus very heavily on storytelling, especially because they aren't typically very long episodes. You know, these aren't like 2 hour long blockbuster kind of story productions. These are very small, dense things that they try to cram a lot of meaning into the little bit that they give you and show you. And I think they do that very well. Now, that said, I think some of these themes have been explored, cyberpunk, dystopia, life after humans kind of deal. Like those things have been explored a lot in media over the years. It's very hard to bring something fully original to those themes. And I think if this is like a genre in which you are interested, I don't know that any of it's going to be truly groundbreaking. At the same time, it's definitely something that I think is a different viewing experience for a lot of people who have a Netflix subscription and are maybe more used to those like AAA polished titles, blockbuster titles, stuff like that.
No, that's good. I mean, season 3, it seems like they switched animation back to season 1. A lot of variations from the 6 stills that we saw. So that has me excited because it's like, okay, kind of back to the roots. And we're going to see the wide range and, 15-minute shorts. It's, I don't know, it's a fun ride. But I'm going to kick back to you on the PlayStation news.
Yeah, I mean, so PlayStation, so there's a larger conversation that we would like to have someday about Netflix and what it's doing with its marketing and stuff like that. But for now, let's stick with the smaller announcement that PlayStation wants to add ads into its games. And there's that discussion of what that looks like, what kind of data tracking that would be. Microsoft, for its part, has already said that anything that they release on PlayStation, they would not take any cut of the ad revenue coming out of that, which is an interesting way of not saying whether or not you would take the data that would be harvested from ads, which I think is usually the more invasive bit of that. You know what I mean? Tracking play habits, purchase habits, stuff like that. They did not make a comment on that. They just said that they wouldn't take any revenue from ads that would be hosted in games. Sony is still trying to figure out what it's going to do. And for its part, Xbox is planning to launch a advertising program in the third quarter of this year as well. So I don't know what that's going to look like, if they're going to be very in your face ads, or if it's going to be like, oh, you're doing a racing game, here's a billboard that has a real world ad on it, not like an in-game ad on it. Because like there is a lot of that real estate. You think like GTA, Fortnite, racing games, stuff like that. Like they do have fake ads that they create for those games. And I think the conversation is kind of like, well, could we just do real ads instead of fake ones and sell those spots?
No, to your point, I think it could work for the PlayStation side of things as far as visuals seamlessly going into it. I think it's interesting in the sense of you can interact in with the billboard, buy cosmetics in the game. Kind of goes back in the whole metaverse conversation we were having too.
Yeah.
I think this is very much an introduction into that. I think Xbox on their side introducing ads to free to play games. Kind of interesting. Capitalist society is what it is. You got to make the money. But again, I think this hints at a lot of stuff we talked about last week, just the metaverse kind of introduction. And again, how you're playing, what you're looking at, what you're buying is now being integrated into what it ultimately is escapism entertainment. And should it be there? Should it not be there? I
Yeah.
think it's a conversation we definitely have to dive into. But
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think it brings up the other issue too of then being forced to be online for games that do not have a need to be online. You know, like a God of War or something like that. It's something that's perfectly fine playing offline. There's no reason why that would even need online connectivity. But then if you're looking to get ad space in a game or something like that that could otherwise be played offline, or you're looking to play even a racing game like in single player mode kind of deal that you could be offline, well, now the ads are tied to probably online assets and you're being forced online, which is another, I think, issue and kind of concern with like the way this is going, because it's definitely moving gaming and like the resources and stuff. While I will definitely acknowledge that most of the people I think listening to this podcast have the resources, that's not going to be a big issue. Also, let's recognize the issues of access to technology around the world, access to the internet, and the way that this is sort of forcing you to be connected. And even if you just have a simple outage or something go on, like you're going to be kicked off potentially because now in-game ads are tied to the internet, which I would be fuming if that happened to me.
no, and there's honestly two games, which kind of segues into the next topic that I think could very well be introductions to this.
Yeah.
Sega announced two blockbuster basically remakes, as they described them as Jet Set Radio, Crazy Taxi. Super popular games. I think they were actually on Xbox, originally on the Dreamcast, which super underrated system at the time. Just kind of fell in between technology booming, basically. But definitely cult classics, fan favorites. The weird thing with this is they're saying they're basically big budget, kind of blockbuster remakes for it, but they still also may get canceled, which is very interesting to me to be tipping in resources. Two big titles that I think immediately will have a fan base, probably sell easily over a couple million copies just because people are aching for the retro gaming, especially these two. The fan lore is real, modern takes on it, but definitely in a cityscape landscape, yeah, you could see in-game ads then in that sense. Very possible.
Yeah, and like one of the things that Sega has specifically announced around this is that they are looking for ongoing monetization of these games. They definitely are looking towards like a Fortnite business model or something like that, where they would be able to keep making money over time after the release. Do want to point out Jet Set released on Dreamcast originally, and Crazy Taxi was an arcade game. That's how freaking old it was. Came out in '99.
Really?
Before it got ported over to, I think it was on PlayStation 2, is I think when it got moved over to consoles. I'm not strong on that. Might actually, Crazy Taxi might have actually made its console debut also on Dreamcast. Now that I'm looking it up as we're talking.
I thought it was Dreamcast. I remember the demo
Yeah.
had Crazy Taxi, but
Yeah, Crazy Taxi was an
that's a
arcade
pop
game
culture reference I
previously,
didn't know. I
and
didn't know it
then
was an
got
arcade
ported
game
over
first.
to Dreamcast. Dreamcast was ahead of its time, man. It really was. I still remember playing Crazy Taxi and loving the heck out of that game when it was coming out. So I think for me, one, pleased to see some of these older titles maybe getting updates, because one of the things that's always driven me personally crazy is graphics not keeping up. I frankly spend too much money on my monitor and my graphics card for it not to look pretty on my screen. But then the concern obviously around the monetization goals behind these updates and what impact that may or may not have on the user experience.
No, I'm with you. It's going to be interesting. I'm more intrigued to see if they actually do get canceled. But the monetization, I think it's going to be a topic we'd have to definitely dive more into. But it's going to be interesting with these new games, and kind of we've talked about that love and retro feel for games, and the retro fan base, and now it's getting modernized. Is that going to be a conflict there? Something to watch for sure.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting. And talking about conflicts, our favorite actor, DC actor, who's been just living his best life in Florida, Ezra Miller, was arrested. Sorry, Hawaii. You are correct. He was living his best life in Hawaii, was arrested now for the second time for this time second-degree assault. This happened this past Tuesday. He was arrested at 1:30 a.m. And this time he hit a 26-year-old woman on the head, caused injury, obviously. I mean, what's going on, man? Like, why can't he keep his head down? Do you think it's just island fever?
I don't know. I don't know enough about, I don't really read celebrity magazines and tabloids and stuff to know, the spiral, but it definitely seems like the dude's got some anger issues he's got to sort out. He clearly feels something's attacking him in a way to where, why else are you going out? Or it's substance abuse and, he's just intoxicated and acting a fool regardless. Plus, throwing a chair at somebody going hard on a Tuesday. I mean, March Madness is over. I don't know if you need to go hard on a Tuesday anymore.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I don't. Like, it's a shame, honestly.
I think as much as I would love to talk a little about the personal struggles that I think he's dealing with too, is what kind of impact does this have on the DC universe? We've touched on this before because it seems a lot like they were going for like a Flashpoint type thing with where they were going with stuff. So we expected Flash's character and the movie that's set to release in 2023 to be a big part of the DC universe and being like almost a get out of jail free card with the whole Snyder cut and everything else that we've dealt with the Justice League in terms of you can literally do Flashpoint and retcon, but like not actually retcon because you're changing timelines, right? So like you can reboot the whole thing however you want to do it. Is that kind of spent with what's going on with Ezra Miller?
I mean, yes and no. In a way, yes, because it seemed like very much they wanted him to basically be a catalyst for this. Maybe not the focal point, but Flash and his character was definitely going to be a catalyst going into it. That same breath, then, to your point, they could shoot a scene with the new Flash and just as easily correct it, but we don't know how many appearances he has, everything else. You're talking now multiple movies, multiple kind of scripts probably already written, with Ezra basically being Barry Allen, being involved one way, shape, or form, because it did seem like he was going to have kind of this Tony Stark effect with DC's relaunch, which means even if it's just a cameo at the end of the film or it's a Nick Fury kind of thing, Ezra was going to be involved in that some way, shape, or form. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. DC's already kind of fallen out of favor. The Batman is a phenomenal movie, but their actual cinematic universe as a whole, it's in shambles. And then,
yeah, I mean,
Ezra is kind of in shambles too, and it's kind of like, all right, where does it go? And to your point too, like it kind of gets lost then because the guy's definitely going through some sort of mental health crisis of some sort too. So should there be empathy on that regard too, when we've seen actors do a lot worse kind of thing too? So
I mean, I think there should always be empathy for people just on a human level, but at the same time, it's to your point of like, do you want to pin the franchise that you're trying to build to this person now? Probably not. Now, I think the only kind of like redeeming thing we can say is that like there are various incarnations of the Flash, and while he is one of the better known heroes, like the storylines maybe from the comics aren't going to be as well known to the general public, maybe. So like you might be able to bring in a different Flash with the timelines and the travel stuff like that to like bring in a different guy and kind of swap him out. Might not be the hardest character to replace, I guess, maybe in the scheme of things. At the same time,
received or she gonna be received? That's the thing too.
Yeah, who knows?
Don't really know. Like Ezra,
and the Flash movie, for its part, I think is
know.
kind of done. Like it is delayed till 2023, but that was COVID stuff. So I don't know how much they're able to really pivot whatever that storyline is going to be. So I definitely think the DC universe is in a tough place. I think Ezra Miller is in a very tough place. Feel for the guy. But I think that's just about all we have time for this week on Spectator Mode. So thanks for coming by and look forward to any feedback you guys may have in terms of format and timing as we try to tighten this up and bring you the news of the week.